As necessidades sentidas atualmente pelas populações mais vulneráveis e em especial pelos países menos avançados não são as mesmas a que assistimos nos últimos anos. Decorre uma revisão das políticas de desenvolvimento e dos seus objetivos, e as tendências apontam para caminhos que nem sempre são os mais favoráveis e propícios a um desenvolvimento sustentável e que promovam o espaço de intervenção da sociedade civil. Assim, é fundamental estimular os debates que questionam os paradigmas vigentes e que promovem novas formas de pensar e agir, que apresentam novas abordagens, novas soluções. O foco na inovação para o desenvolvimento é mais importante que nunca por essas razões. Assistimos a uma manipulação tecnológica sem precedentes que influencia o comportamento das pessoas e que ameaça as democracias. É importante que a inovação para o desenvolvimento seja guiada por princípios de inclusão, de respeito pela diversidade, de valorização dos recursos existentes e de reforço da identidade cultural, entre outros aspectos. Neste contexto, as organizações da sociedade civil, e em particular as ONGD, devem ser capazes de ter a oportunidade para se reestruturarem, adaptarem e serem resilientes. A inovação para o desenvolvimento é uma abordagem e ferramenta essenciais e estratégica nas intervenções desenvolvidas pelas diferentes organizações e intervenientes. Neste sentido, a Plataforma Portuguesa das ONGD tem procurado refletir sobre esta temática e outras relacionadas com o impacto da digitalização no desenvolvimento, procurando apoiar a preparação das ONGD portuguesas para os desafios que se afiguram. Temos participado com as redes internacionais que somos membro em posicionamentos no quadro de advocacy e influência política para garantir que as políticas relacionadas com a digitalização, com a promoção da inovação, tenham um lugar cimeiro no futuro e que respeitam uma série de princípios que são importantes, nomeadamente aqueles que eu já mencionei. Depois também, em conjunto com a Fundação Carlos de Gulbenkian e com a Oficina Global e o CESA, organizámos as várias edições do International Development Summer Course, em particular a segunda dedicada à questão da digitalização. Nesse ano também, em 2020, em 19, lançámos também a 19ª revista da plataforma sobre este tema e organizámos em 2020 uma série de iniciativas em torno da digitalização com vários parceiros. Portanto, chegamos aqui hoje para esta colaboração com a Oficina Global do Centro de Estudos sobre África e Desenvolvimento do ISEG no projeto de investigação, mudança e inovação nas ONGD portuguesas. Acreditamos que a abordagem da inovação para o desenvolvimento deve ser uma prioridade estratégica das ONGD na resolução de problemas antigos e na procura de soluções para o futuro, e deve ser um caminho de capacitação, fortalecimento e aprendizagem contínua e conjunta. Por isso, lançamos então aqui, damos as boas-vindas também em nome da Plataforma Portuguesa das ONGD e desejamos uma boa sessão. Muito obrigada.
Muito obrigada, Rita. Obrigada pela apresentação e obrigada pela parceria. Portanto, como a Rita disse, este webinário realiza-se no contexto de um projeto de investigação que o nosso Centro de Estudos sobre África e Desenvolvimento se encontra a realizar sobre mudança e inovação nas ONGD, e achamos que a melhor forma de começar o projeto, e antes de começar a investigação, fazer esta sessão de debate sobre precisamente o que é inovação para o desenvolvimento e que perspectivas é que podemos encontrar na sociedade civil. Portanto, o meu nome é Ana Luísa Silva, sou investigadora doutoranda no CESA, estou aqui a representar o centro. Eu não me vou alongar muito mais, a Rita já fez uma excelente apresentação, e é de dizer que nós, enquanto CESA, somos parceiros da plataforma em várias das iniciativas que a Rita mencionou, e achamos que faz todo o sentido continuar este diálogo entre universidade e as organizações que estão no terreno. Portanto, todas as iniciativas que temos vindo a pôr em prática, nomeadamente com a Gulbenkian, também vão muito nesse sentido, e queremos continuar um pouco esta construção. A agenda hoje vai ser esta. Nós estamos aqui um bocadinho atrasados, acho que conseguimos recuperar. Vamos começar com o professor Keith Pickard, que é professor associado em Sociologia Política no International Institute of Social Studies da Erasmus University of Rotterdam. nos Países Baixos. Ele vai falar-nos um pouco sobre os atuais desafios da sociedade civil organizada. Eu depois vou partilhar convosco, muito brevemente, fazer um pequeno contexto da inovação na cooperação para o desenvolvimento e, em particular, do ponto de vista da sociedade civil, a partir dos resultados da minha própria investigação. E depois temos connosco dois convidados de duas organizações, o Munir Ahmad, da Aga Khan Foundation, Global Innovation Lead, e a Wendy Ho, que é Senior Staff Learning, M&E and Knowledge Strategy and Impact na ONG HIVOS, que é uma organização com sede nos Países Baixos também. Portanto, a ideia é termos esta apresentação, este webinário, este debate, todo em torno de o que é a inovação e que estratégias de inovação é que as organizações da sociedade civil neste momento põem em prática. E, obviamente, isto é um webinário, é um debate, portanto, nós pedimos-vos para nos enviarem perguntas, podem fazê-lo através do chat, podem fazê-lo usando a função do Zoom de levantar a mão, creio que já estarão familiarizados com ela, mas se tiverem alguma dúvida, por favor, escrevam no chat. Como vamos fazer as perguntas, portanto, entre as apresentações, vamos dar-vos a oportunidade de fazer algumas perguntas e depois no final teremos um momento um pouco mais longo para debate, partilha de experiências, perguntas, etc. Mais uma vez vos agradeço e vou passar então a palavra, vou aqui interromper o meu compartilhamento do ecrã, e vou passar a palavra ao Kiss, que é o nosso primeiro orador. Kiss, would you like to take the stage?
Okay, now can you hear me? Yes. Yeah, you have to switch to the translation to Portuguese if you would prefer having the translation. So I allow people for doing that now. Thank you very much, Ana Luisa, for inviting me and for providing some context for this webinar today. I work at the International Institute of Social Studies in The Hague, and I have been teaching and doing research on civil society and NGOs for quite some time, mostly focusing on Latin America, but in recent years, because all our students are international and more are coming from Africa, also a lot in Africa and Asia. What I would like to do is give you a bit of context and what is happening in terms of academic research. Is the translation working? Can you say that it is working? Okay, and I'm not speaking too quick. No, okay. So the context here at the background, you see, you probably all know the Civicus civic space monitor that sort of gives an idea of how the world is colored in terms of open civic space, the green, including Portugal, by the way, I just noticed, and closed civic space, most part of Africa and Asia, and orange, where it is repressed. And that is a very important context, because civil society has become more important in the sense that more civil society actors are involved in development, but the setting also has changed in recent, I would say, in the recent decade. There's an emergence of new donors and new actors in the field, and especially new private donors, philanthropic foundations are emerging and are sort of having a lot of influence also on the policy agendas. At the same time, problems are not all resolved. I mean, if you look at development problems, worldwide poverty may decrease, but there is still rising inequality, there's climate destruction, and we see spaces for civic freedoms in many countries repressed and even closing, which requires coordinated action from civil society actors. So the problem here is, and that's a provocation also for the discussion, that in fact most NGO interventions are not really contributing to solving those problems, or they're not really transformative. They're often sort of dealing with the symptoms rather with the causes. And therefore, the overall legitimacy and performance of NGOs is often questioned. If we look back over a decade, NGOs are more in a corner of criticism for these particular reasons. Okay. The academic debates on civil society in recent years are sort of reflecting a little bit this context. I'm working on together with a colleague on an inventory of what the research themes on civil society are, and we had a few webinars over the past year, and 6 points came out there. The first is that we have to recognize that civil society is very different in various settings. And especially in authoritarian settings, civil society has to be sort of qualified and conceptualized in a different way. Also in terms of international and local levels, but also in terms of language. English is still the dominant language in civil society research. With that, whereas many languages have different understandings of the concepts of civil society, solidarity, rights, etc. So there is increased attention, and that's the second point, for the normative side of civil society and also of the rights. And the normative premise of civil society is still very much dominated by a colonial vision about what democracy should look like, what development should look like. So this colonial undertone is more and more questioned. What are actually the values that trigger volunteering and solidarity? What are basic rights and why are they questioned in many countries? And actually, which civic agency is benefiting from changes or reductions in civic space? It's a big discussion. A third big debate is about civil society having, let's say, is broader than just NGOs and aid. I mean, of course, you know that. But what about all these informal associations? What about transnational diaspora networks, which are often sort of not on the radar? Who's involved and why? But also the darker side. We've seen non-civic movements, which we call the dark movements, have been growing. We've seen that in the United States, we've seen that elsewhere, and they're building on social media mobilization. What are the drivers, and how can you keep civil society bright as well? Then there's the whole question of epistemology, the questioning of power in a global knowledge system. There's a new sort of epistemology, as we call it, a new decolonizing knowledge system needed for civil society, one that actually listens also to indigenous knowledge generation. And how is that blending with the traditional, more Western-oriented, more colonial knowledge system? And how to change that knowledge system, which is basically dominated by Anglo-Saxon, bit French, bit Spanish, and maybe a bit Portuguese sort of traditions. My fifth point in these academic debates are about the increasing importance of social media and internet, which have transformed civil societies rather fundamentally. I don't have to sort of explain this a lot. The speed in which changes are going, the breadth of mobilization, the number of people reached in a short time has increased enormously. And how is this linking with the more traditional way of organizing in civil society? That's a big theme in civil society research. And finally, this term which is coming up, shifting power to the south, to the grassroots. What does that mean in terms of decision making, agenda setting, and funding? Okay, so out of these sort of this context and these academic debates, a couple of challenges emerge for the discussion and also for civil society actors. The first one, and I've sort of posed them as terms, as concepts, the question of legitimacy. How can you maintain your legitimate position with a social base that responds to you, that supports you, that is doing more than just liking you on internet. Now, how do you remain that legitimacy? The second is how can you demonstrate and measure results that you actually contribute to change? And I was saying already, fundamental change, not palliative change, not cosmetic change. A third element, and the two are of course related, how can you make sure that you sort of use action and that you trigger and contribute to action to advocate for change in different ways, despite sort of shrinking spaces, despite shrinking resources. A fourth important theme, which also links a little bit to the first one of legitimacy, is how can you remain credible? How can you stay in contact with your constituency? That is often sort of, as we see now, misinformed by fake news, where we have lots of examples. So how you maintain your credibility and how do you stay in contact? Communication could be the other sort of target word. And the last big word is survival. How you maintain your physical existence as organizations working in international development, where funding is restricted and resources are very competitive. So I think in those 5 areas, there's major challenges that we could discuss. I would like to leave it here, Anna.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Kees. And I think that that is a really good cue and a good link with what I would like to share with you about innovation. I'll share my screen again quickly. Okay. So, okay, let me just, here we go. Right, so Kees described us a lot of different challenges that civil society, not obviously only civil society organizations, NGOs who are working in development, but kind of the wider spectrum of civil society. And eu peço imensa desculpa, eu falei agora rapidamente em inglês, mas na verdade eu vou falar em português. Portanto, o Kees partilhou-nos aqui estes desafios da sociedade civil vista de uma maneira mais lata, não só a sociedade civil organizada, não só as organizações da sociedade civil, que de alguma maneira acabam por tocar também aquilo que a introdução que a Rita fez, e esta necessidade das organizações mudarem e enfrentarem os novos desafios de uma forma diferente. E isto leva-me aqui a esta reflexão, que é uma reflexão que acaba por surgir muito rapidamente a quem começa a trabalhar estes temas da inovação na cooperação para o desenvolvimento, que é, de alguma maneira, a inovação é uma resposta a todas estas transformações e a estes desafios, e de outra maneira é também uma consequência. É uma consequência das enormes mudanças que nós observamos no mundo e no setor da cooperação para o desenvolvimento em particular. Esta importância que é dada ao tema, claro que não surge do nada, tem sido uma evolução ao longo dos últimos 20 anos, acaba por ser uma narrativa que se vem construindo, e eu escolhi mostrar aqui esta imagem porque o que nós vimos é que com a aprovação, com a entrada em vigor da Agenda 2030 para o desenvolvimento sustentável, esta narrativa, esta ideia de que inovar é preciso para resolver os grandes desafios sociais que enfrentamos, é uma necessidade. Portanto, a inovação não é um tema novo, naturalmente, é um tema que está presente em várias esferas da nossa da sociedade e em particular na cooperação para o desenvolvimento, mas acaba por surgir em força com esta Agenda 2030 e os Objetivos de Desenvolvimento Sustentável como pano de fundo. Portanto, é um pouco aquilo que diz este relatório, que já é de 2015 do PNUD, que para atingir estes objetivos de desenvolvimento sustentável, que são muito ambiciosos, inovar é preciso. E não é por acaso que, e isto é um exercício essencialmente simbólico, mas se nós fizermos uma análise das palavras na entre a Declaração do Milénio, que é a base para os Objetivos de Desenvolvimento do Milénio, a agenda anterior, a Agenda 2030, e o texto de base da Agenda 2030, que é transformar o nosso mundo, a inovação aparece 17 vezes neste último texto e nenhuma na Declaração do Milénio. Eu acho que isso é algo simbólico, digamos assim. Mas nós aqui estamos a falar, em particular, de organizações da sociedade civil e de ONG, portanto, organizações não governamentais que trabalham em desenvolvimento e que, como nós sabemos, se tornaram nas últimas décadas, sobretudo desde os anos 90 e 2000, como um dos atores mais importantes da cooperação para o desenvolvimento. E de alguma maneira, até muito pela sua origem em movimentos sociais, em movimentos de contestação, se afirmaram desde sempre como organizações que procuram trazer uma alternativa. E é dessa maneira que também são vistas por cidadãos, também por doadores, são vistas como organizações que de alguma maneira têm a inovação também no seu ADN. Por outro lado, o que observamos também é que nestas últimas décadas, estas organizações, as ONGD, organizações não governamentais que trabalham em desenvolvimento, sofreram alterações e modificações muito grandes, tornaram-se muito mais, a prestação de serviços tornou-se uma parte muito mais importante do seu trabalho, também se tornaram bastante mais dependentes de financiamentos externos, e tudo isto não só acaba por ter dois efeitos. Por um lado, tem um impacto na sua liberdade de atuação, digamos assim, e, consequentemente, na sua capacidade de inovar. Por outro lado, portanto, desenvolver um sistema que agora acaba por enfrentar um mundo muito diferente daquele em que se desenvolveram, todos estes desafios que o Keys acaba por mencionar, e que acabam por empurrar ou incentivar, digamos assim, como disse a Rita, dá aqui este imperativo de mudar e de inovar as próprias organizações. Em termos de investigação académica e de pensamento sobre este tema, eu gostava também de dizer que ainda há bastante pouca, e isto portanto, o conceito de inovação é um conceito que acaba por estar omnipresente um pouco no setor, mas também em tantas outras áreas, e às vezes acaba por ser usado pelas organizações muito também como ferramenta de marketing e de fundraising. E, portanto, quando tentamos olhar para a inovação que está realmente a acontecer, às vezes é um pouco diferente separar o trigo do joio, digamos assim. E por isso é que são tão importantes trabalhos como este que estamos a realizar com a plataforma, que é olhar para o que as nossas organizações, e há outras organizações que também já começaram a fazer isso, mas é isso que nós temos de fazer, portanto, olhar para as organizações portuguesas e perceber como é que elas estão a inovar e quais são as suas perspectivas. E antes de passar aos nossos próximos oradores, que verdadeiramente vêm partilhar também a sua experiência neste campo, eu gostaria só de partilhar aqui convosco uma seleção de resultados da investigação que eu fiz o ano passado com a Forus International, que é uma rede de plataformas de organizações, portanto é uma rede formada por organizações como a Plataforma das ONG e muitas outras que estão aqui connosco também hoje, e eu fiz esta investigação precisamente para tentar mapear a cultura de inovação e perceber as perspectivas destas organizações sobre o tema. E este meu trabalho foi feito a partir de uma amostra apenas de 20 organizações, com as quais eu fiz um inquérito e depois algumas entrevistas. E o primeiro dado que eu estou aqui a mostrar e que eu acho que é bastante interessante é que, não só, por um lado, os inquiridos consideram a inovação uma prioridade elevada ou muito elevada para as suas organizações, como, por outro lado, consideram que as suas organizações são, na sua maioria, são inovadoras, ou seja, olham para os últimos 3 anos da sua atividade e dizem sim, nós pusemos em prática inovações. Por outro lado, o que é que estas organizações consideram como inovação? É difícil, isto é uma pergunta muito, muito difícil, porque sintetizar todas as visões que me chegaram de o que é a inovação para a minha organização foi praticamente impossível. Para algumas, inovação é novidade, é originalidade, é criatividade. Para outras é uma forma de responder às necessidades das organizações da sociedade civil. Para outras é transformação social. Para outras é usar metodologias baseadas em evidência. Portanto, há aqui uma variedade muito grande naquilo que as próprias organizações dizem que é inovação para as suas organizações. E esta nuvem de palavras, que foi feita a partir de palavras-chave identificadas pelas organizações, quando pensam em inovação, acaba por mostrar precisamente isso. Portanto, vocês veem aqui uma série de ideias muito variadas, que vêm à cabeça das organizações destas plataformas quando pensam em inovação. Claro que falamos de colaboração, de aprendizagem, de mudança. Afinal, estamos a falar de redes, mas eu acho que é de notar também que as tecnologias de informação e comunicação e a digitalização, que foram mencionadas tanto pela Rita, tanto pelo Kiso, como uma área de transformação dentro da qual as organizações têm que aprender a navegar, digamos assim, apareceu aqui de forma bastante evidenciada aqui, e no debate que eu tive depois com as organizações, aparece também como uma motivação muito forte, de duas formas, como uma motivação muito forte para inovar, mas também como um impulsionador de inovação muito importante. Portanto, leva-nos aqui a esta pergunta, que é aquela que, de alguma maneira, nós estamos aqui a tentar responder a partir deste contexto hoje, que é como é que as organizações da sociedade civil organizada, que trabalham na cooperação para o desenvolvimento, como é que elas inovam, como é que elas veem a inovação, que estratégias é que põem em prática e, de alguma maneira, também porquê. Nos importa perceber, se quisermos ter uma perspectiva reflexiva, não é, sobre o tema. Eu vou-vos deixar aqui, porque o meu objetivo era apenas este, dizer que a inovação é um tema ainda pouco explorado, mas é para isso que nós fazemos este trabalho, e aquilo que nós queremos explorar neste webinário são diferentes formas de abordar a inovação a partir da experiência de organizações. Por isso temos aqui então o nosso colega da HK, no Mudir, e a Weni da Hivos, que nos vão partilhar a sua experiência. Eu creio que é, se calhar, momento de fazer uma pequenina pausa. Se alguém tiver alguma pergunta, nós vamos vou interromper aqui o meu compartilhamento e vamos mudar os intérpretes, é isso, Renata? Fazer a troca de intérpretes? Peço para me avisar quando estiver pronto, para podermos passar a palavra ao Munir. E, entretanto, vou aqui olhar, ver se há aqui alguma pergunta. Não encontrei aqui. Não temos aqui nenhuma pergunta. Não sei se alguém quer fazer alguma intervenção. Pode utilizar a função de levantar a mão. Ou ainda é cedo no debate, se calhar. Não, ninguém tem aqui nenhuma pergunta ainda. Já tudo tímido. Temos aqui a Mariana, que diz que o conceito de inovação parte de premissas de um contexto e necessidades específicas, por isso é sempre muito diverso. E é verdade, todas estas questões de partir do local acabam, na minha investigação também, acabam por ter muita importância. Renata, já estamos prontos? Podemos passar? Ainda não? Só 2 minutinhos. Pedimos desculpa, mas às vezes estas questões tecnológicas acabam por nos trocar um bocadinho as voltas, mesmo com testes feitos várias vezes antes. Só um minutinho. Munir, estamos prontos? Está tudo ok?
Sim. Yes.
Yes. Se queres ir já testando o teu ecrã, ver se está tudo ok. Ok, estamos bem. Podemos começar? Ok, podemos começar então, Munir.
Great. Eu vou falar em inglês. Good morning, everyone. This has been a very exciting discussion so far. I'm very excited to be part of this discussion. So thank you very much for having me. My name is Munir. I'm Portuguese. And I'm here representing the Aga Khan Foundation. I'm the global lead for the Aga Khan Foundation. And for around 15 years, I've been involved with this organization, working in the intersection of design, technology, and social impact. So I'm thrilled to have this opportunity to talk more about the work that we are doing and some insights about how we approach innovation. I just want to say a quick word about the Aga Khan Foundation. Some of you might not be familiarized. So the Aga Khan Foundation is a development agency that works in some of the most remote, hard to reach parts of Asia and Africa. We work in around 25 countries, and we work in very close partnership with communities to improve their quality of life. Another thing that is very interesting when you learn more about the Aga Khan Foundation is we have what we call a multi-input approach towards development. What this means is that we bring together interventions that span across a variety of teams, such as agriculture, food security, early childhood development, education, economic inclusion. So we work in large areas of in the mountainous areas of Pakistan or Afghanistan. And we believe that just improving education is not enough. Just bringing economic opportunities is not enough. We need to bring all these aspects together so that communities can thrive. So moving into what brings us today, which is very relevant to the work that the Aga Khan Foundation does, because not only we invest significantly in innovation, but around the world, we work with around 40,000 civil society organizations. That's our way of working, starting from from formal or informal groups, women's savings groups, youth groups, farmer groups. This is the way we are very embedded in the communities. So one question that I would like to start with, and Anna already touched upon this, so this is an opportunity for me to go faster, is to really talk about what does this mean, innovation? Because there is sometimes a misconception that innovation is very much linked to technology, to apps, to mobile phones, digital transformation. That's what we hear in the news. But the concept that I want to talk about today is really this aspect around social innovation, which has a different tone to which we should look into. So the way we frame it, social innovation is not really about technology. It's not about creating very edgy solutions. It's actually about providing greater value for the people we are serving, to having more impact. If we can design solutions that are more cost effective, that are more sustainable, that can scale better, then we are innovating. And when we compare what innovation is driven in a for-profit scenario and in a non-profit, there's a fundamental difference on where we start. In businesses, and I had some startups myself, you always start with, where is the money? How can I make money? But in social innovation, you actually start from desirability. What do people want? What do people need? And once you understand that piece, then you start to look at, but how can my organization or the system in which I work can help? So what is feasible to help solve those problems? And then we should also look at sustainability, not only financial sustainability, but human resource sustainability, how we are going to ensure, which is a big problem in development, that once the funding is over, those programs don't die out. And there's this sweet spot of innovation. So when you find those solutions, when you identify a problem worth solving, that you have the knowledge how to do it, and you can create a program or a solution that is sustainable, that's the sweet spot of innovation that we are trying to hit. So if we believe that that innovation is important, like, why does it matter? Why it should matter to organizations such as ours? Well, as you know, in the global development landscape is having a lot of change. We are dealing with very complex problems, starting with climate change, which is leading to so much migration. We have conflicts that are resulting in refugees. This whole issue around automation and AI, which is the transforming the nature of work and the future of work. We have the environmental degradation. Recently, we all faced COVID. So all of these are having a massive impact on the complexity of challenges that we need to deal with. And the reality is that for most of them, we still don't have a clear answer how to solve them. So this is the context in which 4,000 AKF staff and around 40,000 civil society organizations are dealing every day to solve very different problems and finding creative solutions on how to address and how to have impact. So we truly recognize that we need to find local solutions that can be an answer for these global questions. So if innovation is really so important for us, how can we make innovation happen? That's a very important question that I have been spending a lot of time trying to think about. How can we make this happen? At AKF, our strategy is driven by design. So from the very beginning of the Aga Khan Foundation, we always involved and empowered communities to participate in the design of their own solutions. So for us, we have this long history of having participatory methodologies for development, and that's very important for us. And there are these 5 key ingredients that I think it's important once you are looking at how your organization should go about innovation. The first one is around empathy. So we always try to start by gaining a deeper understanding of community needs using empathy. We also want to stimulate curiosity, creativity, and the development of new ideas. It's very often we keep using the same formula over and over again, but the realities change, the people change, and there's a need for new solutions coming. Also promoting inclusive collaboration across your organization and your stakeholders. More and more development problems are very complex to be solved by one organization. So it has to be a collaborative effort. And we need to experiment, because at the end of the day, we don't know what will work, and taking risks or managing risks is an important aspect of innovation, and use the power of technology to widen our reach and scale our interventions. So as an answer for this constant need for innovation, we have recently launched a new global initiative called Accelerate Impact. So over several years, we've experimenting with innovation with a small team, and Accelerate Impact was born out of the recognition that we need to invest more strategically in innovation to make it replicable and scalable. Innovation should not be a random act of inspiration that happens by luck. It should be stimulated. So Accelerate Impact is really our attempt to democratize innovation, and it's grounded in this belief that the next big idea could come from anyone, anywhere. And we in order to make it actionable, we use human-centered design. And I want to spend just the last few minutes of my intervention to give you a brief explanation of what is human-centered design. So really, human-centered design is a mindset and a creative approach for problem solving. As humans, we tend to jump too quickly into finding solutions. But in human-centered design, we always start by understanding, defining, and framing our problems, and only then using creative problem-solving techniques to reach new and unexpected solutions. So there's this two big phases of first understanding the problem and then solve it. And when we use human-centered design, we usually make decisions based on what communities really want or need, instead of relying on our own instinct or perception. And this is my last slide. So I just want to tell you about how, what is our innovation process. So in human-centered design, we always start by understanding the problem we are trying to solve. And then we use empathy to learn from the people we are designing for. And we use a number of methods for that, through interviewing, observations. We engage people in conversations to generate insights and understand what they care about, what their challenges are, what are their needs. And then we process, we synthesize and make sense of all the information we collected. And we do it for a particular purpose, to understand what is the right problem to solve. Usually when you go through these, this phase of design research, you come up with so many problems, but where are the biggest opportunities where we can make a change? So we identify where the opportunities are and where should we focus to maximize our impact. And once we know what problems we want to focus on, we engage in idea generation to explore a wide range and a large quantity of ideas that go beyond the most obvious solutions to the problem. Then we use rapid prototyping to make our ideas tangible and enable others and communities to experience and interact with our idea and our solution, all with the goal to validate and get feedback from them so we can rapidly iterate and improve our solutions until we gain confidence that what we are coming up with together is actually desirable, feasible, and sustainable. So just to close my intervention, I just want to say, I want to pick on something that he's mentioned in his slides, which I found very interesting. He said there's a need for coordinated action for civil society. And it's not easy to bring a number of stakeholders together and get them to work, because we might be talking about, if we want to change school, we need to deal with the Ministry of Education, with teachers, with the school leadership, with parents. It's such a complex environment, and human-centered design provides us with that. I call it, it's a social technology that enables diverse stakeholders to come together and collaborate on solving complex development issues using design as a strategy to find innovative solutions. And we as development practitioners and our communities, the communities we work with, if we are given the space, the time, the resources to be more creative, I think we can come up with amazing new ideas that can have impact in the lives of people that are living in poverty. Thank you very much.
Muito obrigada, Munir. Muito obrigada. Eu não sei se alguém tem alguma pergunta neste momento. Gostava de falar, pedir não sei, fazer alguma intervenção. Não? A Helena Andrade, não sei se está a pedir a palavra, parece-me que não. Não. Temos aqui a Ana Ferreira. Ana, pode ativar o som, pode ativar o vídeo se quiser.
Olá, bom dia a todos. Obrigada pela explicação do Munir, foi muito interessante, e à medida que estava a explicar eu estava-me a lembrar também do Design Thinking Methodology, portanto é muito semelhante, não é? De reunir, empathize com a situação, com os problemas, e depois então fazer o protótipo, testar e pronto, e depois perceber a que é que podemos aplicar. Gostava de perguntar se nos consegue dar aqui um exemplo prático onde tenha sido utilizada esta metodologia, passo a passo. É possível fazer isso? Não sei se temos tempo para isso, mas seria interessante, ou seja, ver na prática todos estes diferentes passos. Obrigada.
Obrigado. Well, step by step might be difficult because it would take a lot of time.
I know.
But I can give you one example. So we recently launched an initiative called Schools 2030. This is an initiative that we are working in 10 countries, including Portugal. And in each country, we chose 100 schools. So around the world, we are working with 1,000 schools with the ambition that innovation should not come from these organizations in US and Canada defining how schools should be run, but the innovation should come from teachers in Tanzania, in Uganda, who don't have many of the resources that teachers would have in the developed world. So what we put together was a human-centered design toolkit, and we gave training to teachers in 1,000 schools so they can come up with innovations on their own way. And then we have a system where we are creating a catalog of all these innovations. And I'm seeing remarkable things like innovating how to teach mathematics using things that they are developing with recycled plastic bottles to teach math. So it's amazing. And for me, this was a surprise because I also came from that mindset that we know it all, we know better than others. But when you reach out to these teachers in rural India, in Tanzania, the stuff they come up with, when you give them the tools and the process and the confidence that they can be the change in their own communities, at least in their own classroom, it's very powerful. And we take them through this 6-step process. And maybe I'll share here in the chat. We made the toolkit open source and available for anyone to download, use. I'll share it with you here. And we are now building another toolkit, which is not focused on education, that any development organization dealing with any subject could use. And this will be launched maybe beginning of next year. So I'll make sure that I keep the platform informed so that its members can benefit from those resources.
Obrigada, Munir. Obrigada, Ana, pela pergunta. E porque começámos um bocadinho atrasados e porque queria dar o tempo, o mais tempo possível aos nossos oradores, eu vou passar aqui então a palavra à Weni Ho, da Hibos. Weni, would you like to try and share your screen, or would you like us to do it? There we go. I think we are fine.
It's not easy to got it.
Great.
You can see my screen?
Yeah.
Great. It is a little bit difficult to be the closing speaker after so many great contributions, but I will do my best. If I speak too fast, please let me know. Yeah, I can't see you because if I put the slideshow in presentation mode, I can't see the rest. So you have to speak up if there is something that you would like to ask of, or if there is something that is wrong. So my name is Weni Ho. You can also say who is who. I am going to speak for HIFOS, but I am not only talking about the HIFOS experiences, because I bring experiences from other NGOs and other different actors, as well from knowledge institutes and from governmental institutes. And I think that is very important for the way how I will talk about innovation. So if I talk about innovation, what is it actually that I mean? I'm using one of the very often used models to look at innovation, just to unpack what it is, just like what Munir has done. I'm just trying to unpack what innovation is for me.
Sorry, Wendy, I'm sorry if I'm cutting you, but I think your slides are stuck. At least I don't know if other people can see them. For me, they're stuck in the same first slide.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you maybe set it up then?
Yep, I will set it up.
That's easier.
Yeah, I think that's fine. Can you, okay, let me do that. And just let me know when you want me to change it. Okay, can you see it?
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay, great.
So what is it that I mean with innovation? I'm using the model that is very often and very widely used of the 4 P's of innovation. And the 4 P's stand for product, process, position, and paradigm. And products refers to new products of new services or improving existing ones. Process means improving or innovating on the way how we deliver or create a product or service. Position is innovating on how we see and who we see as possible audiences or constituents. And paradigm refers to theories, values, or beliefs that you have in your mind, which is something like a mental model about how you as an organization think that the world works and what makes a good development. Another way of looking at innovation is to take the dimension of speed, incremental innovation, or radical or disruptive change. Yeah. Next, please. So HIFOS is just a case about which I will use as to talk about innovation. The video, please. To change a little bit from just plain videos or plain slides, I'm going to show.
Can you see it already or not yet?
No. I'm going to show one video that explains what HIFOS is.
The idea of a democratic and free society in which all persons will live together in harmony and with equal opportunities.
Our future calls for dreams, where you live the life you want to live, fearless and free, with equal rights and dignity for all. Our future calls for green economies and open societies, where governments no longer serve themselves, where energy and food no longer divide, destroy, and deplete, where the self is unbound and love unchained. Our future calls for brave men and women standing tall, who walk unafraid, pushing for change, challenging no's. Heads in the air, feet on the ground. Our future calls for adventurous people bustling with ideas, who explore and create, finding new ways outside the ordinary and obvious, revealing a world unseen. We're looking forward to the future and work with heroes and adventurers all over the world, being in the right place at the right time, seeking new solutions to persistent problems. We innovate for for social change. We are HIVOS. People Unlimited.
Thanks, Anna-Luisa. Can you move to the next slide? The next one, please. No, the one before. Okay, so this one, please. So we ended the video with innovating for social change. Now, I'm not going to talk about only the niceties of innovation for social change. So I'm going to talk what we do and how we innovate and what conditions we create for innovation, but also about what hurdles and dilemmas that we encounter. So space within HIVOS for innovating for social change, if you measure that along the 4P model, product, process, position, and paradigm, we see that at all levels, product, process, position, paradigm, there is space to innovate. Especially at the product level, there is a constant change and constant innovation happening based on what people see. And people, I mean, not only our staff, but also from partners and the CSOs or CBOs that we are working with, and sense making of what is new or what is a niche or what is a new opportunity. Especially when there are new project proposal development opportunities, then there is a spur of new products possible. If we look at the process level, there is a continuous looking for how to learn and how to improve. For example, at this moment, we are moving more and more into adaptive management. And we have developed a new methodology for monitoring and evaluation of impact of advocacy initiatives. And that's something which is linked to, I will talk about that later on, the infrastructure that we have for innovation. Regarding the position, we have analyzed that in view of the many, many changes that are happening, we need to change the focus of our work. So from 5 themes, we are moving to 3 impact areas, which is gender inclusivity and gender equality and diversity inclusion, civic rights and decentralization and climate justice. And we are changing how we work in the sense that we are moving more and more to decentralized hubs. Regarding the 4th level of paradigm, that is the most difficult one. It happens, but it happens very often ad hoc. We stumble upon the need or the interest to innovate on the paradigm. We do have a 5-year cycle where there is the space and really the interest and the focus on talking about how to innovate on the paradigm. But for example, at this moment, we are really struggling with the changes that are happening, the deep changes that are happening around us that Case are talking about. We are supposedly people unlimited. We have a humanist approach, but if you talk about people unlimited in the face of fake news and hate speech, what does unlimited mean? So that's something paradigm innovation is not easy. Next slide, please. So if we look at the infrastructure, at the level of the organization, our infrastructure for innovation is that we have a fund for that is called the Idea Accelerator, where people, staff, and partners, if they have ideas, you can get a small funding to crystallize, to further develop those ideas. There is a second level of funding. It is also for partners or staff. That's called the innovation funds to operationalize to further those fundings, the ideas, sorry. The third one is just recently that we have communities of practice or communities of learning, where as an organization, we learn about what innovation may work and what innovation may not work. At the project or program level, there are many different infrastructures that projects have installed. I'm just naming a very few. One is the innovation facility. The second one is the change lab, and I will talk about that later. The third one is working with frontrunners and seeing what are the innovations that we can then upscale or test. And regarding the staff at project level, there are many different staff that have innovation in their package. That's, for example, innovation or learning officers, linking or learning officers, their design monitoring, evaluation, learning advisors, and so on. Next one, please. I pick up one example that was mentioned of our innovation infrastructure, and that is the Change Lab. Change Lab is built on systems thinking and Theory U. Now, Theory U was developed by a professor named Otto Scharmer, who, based on his research with many different organizations and entrepreneurs, developed a theory of learning and change management. And he called that Theory U, because in the Theory U, what he said is very important is to first go down, then go at the bottom, and then go up. So what do I mean with that? Go down is looking at the past patterns which are stopping or an obstacle for innovation or for change, for transformative change. So that's very important to first stop and look at what is happening, what is hampering me, what is obstructing me. And then at the bottom is the connection to yourself, to the real source of innovation. That's who is myself and what is my work with the capital W. So for what am I in the world? And based on that, you can go up again, and that is bring that new understanding of what is the most important into the world. For example, through prototyping or testing and so on. So this is the difference, and a very important difference from, let's say, instrumental use of design thinking, is that it is based on the personal understanding of what is important for you in the world, and that then can allow for transformative change. Next one, please. So if you then look at the key characteristics of for the change labs, is the second part of what the change labs are. I said that they are based on Theory U and systems. So systems thinking talks about bringing the whole system in the room. If we are to take on a system problem, we need a system approach to take on that problem. A system problem is, for example, the food systems. There are many different actors besides just the consumers, for example, or the farmers, that you have to look at it from the systems level. So in a change lab, we bring all the different actors in that have a stake in that system. Both the actors that can bring change, as well the actors that benefit from the change. So people or actors that can obstruct the change, the transformative change of the system, as well as the people who really want that system to change. So this is really a multi-actor initiative, a multi-actor process. So the change labs are designed and facilitated as such, where we bring in where we bring together the systems thinking and Theory U, is that we focus the process on linking the mind, heart, and the will. And that comes from the theory U. So this is beyond instrumental design thinking, for which there are a number of tools. For example, the safaris, the 3D sculpting, the journaling, and the prototyping. In the safaris, we, for example, I just give a very simple example. We bring in governmental officials and bankers to, for example, slum dwellers, so they understand and they really see and experience what the problem is. So rather than a slum dweller, for example, talking about the lack of water or the problem that they cannot access healthy food, we bring in those people who can, who have the power to decide in their hands, bring them on safaris. Journaling is a personal instrument where people reflect on what they have seen and how that actually affects the change. 3D sculpting is where many actors bring together their different views, their different interests, and together bring in or develop a prototype. So an example, for example, is the food change lab, where street food vendors, governmental officials, consumers, traders, CSOs, and different knowledge institutes came together in the food change lab. With the energy change lab, it was also a multi-actor initiative. Next one, please. So the picture is not always rosy. It is navigating the messiness of innovation. Innovation is not a linear process. So I have just picked 5 possible struggles, hurdles, and dilemmas that we and HIVOS have experienced. The first one is that innovations do not permeate to all organizational levels and units. Especially when there is innovation at project level, it remains very often at that project level. Then innovation is very often linked to funding. If there is a donor, and that's really the freedom that the Aga Khan Foundation has, we as a donor-dependent organization, we don't have that freedom. If there is a donor who allows that space, then we can bring in innovation initiatives. Of course, that's part of the negotiation with donors, but it's not easy. The third one is to understand and avoid lock-in innovations. For example, if we have a digital innovation, but then, and that's, people were very happy about that, but then it turns out that the digital innovation is mostly accessed by young men who have the means to have extra data to access that digital innovation. And it's not easy for women who don't have that, those resources to access that innovation. And the fourth one is to understand innovation as part of social change and not as something which is isolated from social change. It has to be linked or contributing to transformative social change. And the fifth one, that innovation product is happening more often than innovation process, and that's happening more often than position innovation, and that's happening more often than paradigm innovation. So next slide. What we try to do to overcome those hurdles and dilemmas and struggles, if you look at the first hurdle, that innovations do not permeate to all levels and units, we have organization-wide communities of practice or action. We have communities-wide learning where innovations are shared and discussed. We are developing generic overall guidance materials, and we create ad hoc HIVOS-wide learning events, all to break down the walls between the different initiatives where innovations happen. Now, that innovation is linked to obtaining funding, and that limits the freedom to think, is that we accompany the process after approval, that how to create space once the funds have been obtained. And sometimes we can accompany that with our own unrestricted funding. Understanding and avoiding lock-in innovations, that one way that we tackle that is that we organize regular multi-level reflection and review. And there we can, through adaptive management, we can identify those lock-in innovations and try to redesign the innovation in such a way that, for example, women can easier access it. Understanding innovation as part of social change, it's very often that happens that there is a kind of innovation that relates or that resembles shifting deck chairs on the Titanic while the ship is sinking. So we need to link the innovation to systems change, and we do that through theory of change. So constantly reflecting, how does this innovation contribute to our overall transformative goal? That's something that is brought in all the different projects and all the different units. And it requires a mind shift towards systems thinking. And we do that step by step. So this is just a brief overview how we break down the buzzword of innovation by bringing in what, whom, how, and why. Next slide, please. I kept separate the last hurdle, that product innovation happens much, much more often than paradigm innovation. That's something that we see. And why is that? And we don't really have to answer. We see that product innovation happens very often and very frequently because there are project funds to do that. For process innovation, we need staff and partners who have the dedication, program managers that allow for the flexibility, and use adaptive management, which is not easy. For position innovation, what we are up against is that how to get all the ducks in a row. For example, we have a finance and control unit who thinks very differently, who does not allow flexibility or adaptive management. The same with directors, management team, and steering council, and so on. All those ducks need to be in a row before position innovation can really happen. Paradigm innovation is something which we as a donor-dependent organization are struggling with, because time to look around and to make sense as an organization and to have the courage to really take on paradigm innovation, that's something that is not easy. And the last slide is that we have some resources available, so that can be shared if people may be interested. Back to you, Ana Luisa.
Thank you so much, Wenny, obrigada. Eu tenho aqui já muitas coisas que gostaria de dizer em conclusão, mas como ainda temos, se calhar, alguns minutos, apesar de se calhar irmos terminar uns minutinhos depois, e como esta intervenção também foi tão rica, eu gostava de dar a palavra às pessoas. Nós temos aqui tanta gente de diferentes organizações, temos aqui pessoas de ONGD, temos aqui pessoas de plataformas, pessoas da ONGD em Portugal, mas também noutros sítios, e se alguém tivesse alguma pergunta e quisesse partilhar alguma reflexão, queria dar a oportunidade primeiro às pessoas. Aqui não tenho nenhuma pergunta no chat, está tudo muito calado hoje. Ok. Bom, já que ninguém tem aqui nenhuma pergunta, eu queria, se calhar, fazer aqui uma pequena reflexão sobre todas estas intervenções. Eu acho que nós apresentámos aqui, tivemos aqui duas...
There is a hand from Kees Bigard.
Oh, there's a hand from Kees. Please, Kees, go ahead.
Okay, can I ask it in English? Thanks, Rennie and Munir and Ana-Luisa also for your contributions. I mean, for me, there is still one big question hanging over this discussion, and that's the question whether innovation is the real issue, or whether realizing social change is the real issue. So, I mean, what is the order? Because Wenny is also saying the bottom line for HIVOS is we innovate for social change. But maybe we also need not to innovate to realize social change. Maybe we have to do something else. So my question is innovation the only key and the only sort of step towards sort of realizing it? Because that may sound as if we don't innovate, nothing is going to change. I'm saying the different thing in different questions. So I would like to put that on the table for my colleagues and for everyone else. How important, after all, and how crucial is innovation for social change?
Acho que essa é uma excelente questão e leva-nos à ideia de que a inovação e a estratégia de inovação é também uma escolha, portanto, não inovar também é uma escolha da qual não falamos muitas vezes. E antes de passar aqui aos colegas, ao Munir e ao Eni para responderem, queria dar aqui a palavra à Daniela, da Caritas de Porto. Olá, Daniela.
Olá, bom dia. Conseguem ouvir-me? Eu não sei se isto é bem uma pergunta ou se é uma partilha de uma inquietação. Eu tenho feito este investimento pessoal e profissional em ouvir falar deste tema e algo que me tem preocupado, e não sei se outros colegas de outras áreas ou até mesmo da área social sentem o mesmo do que eu. Eu acho que é um grande desfazamento entre a academia e a questão da inovação social. Isto é, eu sou educadora social de formação, passam pela Caritas do Porto N estagiários de educação social e de outras áreas, e eu não sinto que isto está a passar na academia, isto é, eu continuo a sentir que os futuros técnicos superiores da área social são formados para trabalhar dentro das gavetas, isto é, são formatados para trabalhar e para fazer sempre na mesma lógica de trabalho. Portanto, se queres trabalhar com idosos, a partir das metodologias estão assim, se tens um especial interesse em trabalhar com públicos desfavorecidos, isto tudo para dizer que, e entrando um bocadinho nesta questão do KISS agora, é quase como a questão de inovação social tem que passar também pelo desenvolvimento desta ideia, deste conceito, desta metodologia, de uma forma transversal à educação e à formação dos futuros profissionais, sejam nas áreas em que forem. Portanto, eu sinto muito isto, eu não sinto miúdos jovens disponíveis para esta criatividade, para esta vontade de querer fazer diferente e de pensar diferente. Nós também já tivemos uma formação de Design Thinking, a metodologia é muito semelhante àquilo que um bom profissional da área social tem que fazer, mas sinto que esta é uma lacuna nesta área. Não sei se sentem o mesmo, mas é algo que me tem vindo a preocupar.
Munir, would you like to start addressing, because I think, I mean, since Aga Khan also works a lot on the education side, perhaps you're also well positioned to answer this question, and perhaps you'd like to comment on what Keith said as well.
Well, I don't want to hijack the discussion because there are so many people here. I would love to hear more than talk at this point. I just want to say that I agree with what Daniela said. I was recently involved in teaching in a master's degree for Católica, for technicians for the social sector. And yeah, this keeps coming back, that there's this gap. We are very theory oriented. We need methodologies that are more practical, because at the end of the day, in the development sector, it's a very resource constrained environment. Like, nobody's going to give you months to investigate and to even to bring people together and get them to work. And many of them are volunteers. They do not have the time. You can't ask them for too much time. How can you create change in a very quick way with simple methodology? So I think there's a lot of reflection for us to do as an industry of development, of how we can make things simple, more practical, because otherwise we'll have great theories. And I'll keep to that.
Wendy, would you like to comment on that as well?
I think it's crucial to keep your focus on the horizon. And the horizon, if the horizon is social change, the transformative change that you want to achieve, then you have to think about what strategies can be used for that. I gave the example of the social change labs, which can bring about system transformative innovation, but it's a very resource intensive methodology. So when do you want to apply that, and when is it really not worthwhile? So you have to be able to connect what you're doing, your interventions, your methodologies, your theories, with the higher level goal, and to judge what is needed, what can be used effectively and efficiently in your case.
Eu gostaria de comentar também que há aqui acaba por ser depois também a dificuldade quando se integram questões de inovação em projetos financiados por doadores, que, portanto, é um pouco aquela contradição de que eu falava também. Portanto, há um empurrão também daqueles que financiam os projetos e as abordagens para se desenvolverem estratégias novas, e muito sempre portanto, na ótica dos produtos, como disse a Wendy, quando há um projeto que quer uma abordagem inovadora, é muito sempre à volta de um produto, de um resultado, porque depois é uma questão também de mensurar, não é? No final do projeto aquilo que se fez, mas como é que se integra depois uma visão mais a longo termo com uma abordagem que é muitas vezes dividida por projetos e que se calhar não tem em conta uma visão a mais longo prazo, uma visão de mudança a longo prazo, que depois também, como disseram, tanto a Wendy como o Munir, atua a diferentes níveis, não é? E esse é talvez um desafio que depois se torna ainda mais difícil, porque, como sabemos, temos todos estes problemas complexos hoje em dia que enfrentamos, e o contexto a mudar de forma muito diferente. Eu gostava de dar aqui a palavra a mais alguém. Eu sei que temos aqui colegas também que estão noutros países, em São Tomé, em Moçambique. Não sei se alguém gostaria de dar também o ponto de vista desses pontos do mundo que são diferentes, um pouco na ótica também daquilo que eu dizia do shift the power, não é? De pensarmos quem é que faz esta inovação e quem é que tem acesso, que é um ponto a que a Rita também já falou. Alguém? Podem levantar a mão? Não? Então, já agora eu ponho a questão também aqui aos nossos oradores, aos dois, tanto ao Munir como ao Wendy, que vai ter... temos aqui um colega que quer falar? Sim, força. Pode-se apresentar, que está aí ainda com o nome da nossa colega, não sei porquê, dizer o seu nome e a sua organização.
Sim, não sei porque que está a apresentar assim. Muito boa tarde, eu sou Armando Correia, estou a tirar mestrado em Estudos de Desenvolvimento no Instituto Universitário de Lisboa. Sou guineense de nacionalidade e, portanto, ainda tenho um pouco background no que toca à experiência profissional, ou seja, diretamente na aplicação dos projetos, um trabalho ligado diretamente à intervenção social e desenvolvimento, em todo o caso. Gostei bastante, foi muito interessante escutar dos oradores a temática sobre a inovação e, sobretudo, na intervenção social com as comunidades. Aqui tenho algumas inquietações minhas que talvez também possa aqui partilhar. Algum pode ser um comentário, outro pode ser algum questionamento no que diz respeito à temática. Me parece que, em algumas medidas, aqui a primeira fala que eu ouvi de Munir Ahmad, que aqui também parabenizo, minha questão estava, sobretudo, na intervenção. Às vezes, quando eu penso nesse conceito, me parece que há uma certa ambiguidade no que diz respeito às suas diversidades, como algum colega aqui já frisou. Portanto, minha questão é que como nós podemos ver a intervenção no que diz respeito às comunidades? Me parece que, em algum sentido, as comunidades não têm uma total liberdade de fazer a escolha sobre seus destinos, porque me parece que quando o projeto já vem com todo o seu, digamos, a sua máquina de intervenção, digamos assim, de uma certa forma, ou seja, já tem um projeto desenhado e que já tem, de alguma certa forma, as expectativas do que vai ser o resultado. E como os oradores aqui que fizeram a temática, que explicarem a temática, como é que vocês veem isso? Se é uma intervenção real, se é uma inovação, tendo em conta o próprio conceito, ou é apenas uma estratégia da metodologia de intervenção? Porque me parece que, em algum sentido, aqui estamos a falar de uma inovação ou de uma mudança de estratégia de intervenção no que diz respeito às metodologias de intervenção, porque uma coisa é, temos projeto para aplicar numa certa comunidade. Outra coisa é que essas comunidades têm também as suas, digamos, destino. Elas têm que ter a sua liberdade, o que realmente eles querem. Então, quando há esse choque, ou seja, uma contraposição daquilo que já foi desenhado pela essa organização e o que a comunidade espera também dessa organização. Por exemplo, o projeto pode ter como resultado, como a expectativa na área da educação. E a comunidade, talvez, o projeto vê de que há uma certa fragilidade em termos de educação, mas a comunidade não quer a educação, a comunidade pode querer outra coisa, pode querer infraestrutura, pode querer estrada, pode querer alguma coisa. E como é que vocês conseguem? Estou aqui a dialogar porque ainda não tenho muita experiência de trabalho de campo, ainda estou a estudar e gostava de ter essa experiência com respeito a essa temática. Mas minha questão é isso, como é que vocês podem ver isso no que diz respeito à intervenção ou uma estratégia de mudança metodológica? Gostei das vossas falas e parabenizo pelo tal. Obrigado.
Muito obrigada pela pergunta. Eu, se calhar, como a Wendy vai ter que sair. I think she was having some issue with the translation, but his question was very much around, are we really talking about innovation in the real sense, or are we just talking about changes in methodologies in the way we actually do development? That was one big point of our colleague's question. And then secondly, how do we make sure that we are using the right methodologies to answer what people really want? His question was around, sometimes we come with a project that we want to develop something around education, but when we get to the communities, what they actually want is something else. It's an improvement in infrastructure, is an improvement in transport, or something else. So how do we as organizations answer what people really want? So I don't know if Wendy, you would like to give your perspective on this, and then perhaps Munir give Kees the word, and then we have another question to address after.
sorry, your first question was about methodologies. I just, if you could look back at the 4-piece innovation model, it's just a model to look at innovation and to unpack innovation. If you talk about methodologies, that can refer to process. So the way how you can intervene, it sounds terrible, intervene in a certain situation. So if you look at innovation as a product, a new cook stove or a new water pipe, a new design for a water pipe or a school's, then that's innovation as a product. So innovation itself can happen or can be categorized at different levels. And depending on the situation, you can shift between methodologies and products or position, depending on how a change process goes. And I think it's going to your second question, I think it's very important to understand and to act from a situation that you do not come in a situation that is at a standstill and only starts moving when you come with your project for schools or for girls, I don't know. So it's how to make your intervention and your project connect with what already exists, and what already exists also talks about people's interests and their needs. You have to find a bridge between the two. So rather than coming in with, now we want to develop a project about locally led solutions for farming, you have to first understand what is going on in the situation, and talking to people, I think that's a great idea. That's very briefly, because the question is really touching on very big issues.
Thank you, Wenny. Munir, would you like to address the question as well?
Yeah, I would love to, because this is such a good question and very dear to my heart, which brings me to this concept and importance of participatory design. And there are a couple of things that I would like to emphasize. I think one important aspect as leaders or people who work for civil society organizations is, what is your approach to developing solutions for the communities? Are you designing for them? Are you designing with them? Or are you empowering for them to design by themselves? So who has the power to decide what's going to be implemented? And I think more and more, we need to shift from designing for them to being just a facilitator, a convener. Maybe there are other roles that we can play beyond being the ones that takes all the decision. I think that's really important. I think the other aspect that should require our reflection is, and this is very much linked to how the donor industry works. So when you work with donors, usually they want to know, what are you going to do? What will be the outcome? What is your budget? What do you want this money for? And we need to shift from solution-driven development to process-driven development. So what I sell to my donors is not a solution, because I don't know. I sell them a process. I tell them, why don't we come together? You, who are the donor, me, who is the development organization, communities, partners, governments. Why don't we come together, and then we'll figure out through a process of co-creation. And that's a mindset shift for donors, because they don't know what they are funding. They don't know what will come out of that. But more and more we are seeing that shift, and that's very powerful. And the third thing I would like to say is, when we want to engage more and work more collaboratively with communities, it comes with a lot of change. So you need to deal with issues of power, of equity. Diversity is key for you to innovate in those environments, understanding the culture, the context. But this is, although it's more difficult, and although it's more complex, it's the only way in which we can realize this ambition of making people shaping their own destinies. That's what we want, right? We don't want them to depend on us. We want them, when they have problems, that they have the tools, the resources, the confidence to solve by themselves. Their neighbors organized in social, in civil society. So I think that's a very powerful kind of ambition for us to have as development practitioners.
Thank you, Munir. Keith, would you like to say something now, or should I give the...
Of course, I always like to talk because it's a very interesting discussion, and I very much agree with Munir. We have to be very careful that this process moving away from the intervener, I think it was the term that when he used, to more like a facilitator is very important, and actually even further to let go of the controls is very important. And along those lines, I think it has not been mentioned here, but I think it's therefore also very important to look at your own society, because the problem, if you talk about problem, is not there, the problem is here. So when we start sort of thinking about problem solving at all, let's please start in your own sort of setting where you are sort of a lot more closer, more legitimate, you know what is happening. And a third thing I want to sort of say to the colleague from Guinea, I forgot your name, who said about sort of the importance of communities sort of deciding about what they want. I think that is essential, but it is also important to recognize that within communities there's power differences, as there is in every organization. So it is not without problems to realize that decision making always is something in which some people are excluded. So I think we have to also address that issue of inclusion. I think Venny sort of mentioned it at all levels, including in communities, that we are very aware of that. And as we are aware of that, I think we are sort of really moving forward in this agenda of shifting the power, but it's not at all easy. And who said it was easy?
I think, yeah. Eu acho que isso é aquela ideia de que a mudança leva muito tempo e que não é fácil. Eu queria dar aqui a última palavra, ou melhor, queria dar aqui espaço para uma última pergunta. Temos aqui a Teresa Paiva Coceiro, da Fundação Gonçalo da Silveira, se quiser ter a palavra, e depois vamos fazer uma última ronda de intervenções.
Boa tarde, bom dia, mas a pergunta é rápida. Primeiro agradecer, gostei muito das intervenções, e como o Keith gosta muito de falar, eu tinha aqui uma pergunta para ele que me surgiu logo desde o início que fiquei aqui, que é: o Keith diz que nós não estamos a transformar, mas sim a ser paliativos, e a minha questão é se uma coisa é, nós temos que ser inovadores para ser transformadores, ou o facto de exatamente trabalharmos com as comunidades, construirmos as soluções, ou procurarmos em conjunto levar mudança, que haja alguma mudança, isso liga com o que disse a Ana Luísa, que leva tempo, não é? E pode dar essa sensação de que estamos a ser paliativos, porque a transformação não é imediata. Não é? E por isso eu gostava de perceber, e a inovação tem associado para mim esta rapidez, não é? Esta mudança, por isso gostava de perceber estes ritmos, se é por isso que somos paliativos, ou o que é que está por trás deste paliativo, ou este não transformador. Obrigada.
Keith, would you like to go ahead and and answer.
Anna, you want me to respond to that?
Or comment, if you'd like.
Yeah, or comment to that. Yes, because I saw it coming back also in the chat about this palliative. And this is sort of a metaphor which is coming from sort of reflections on NGO results of the last decades, which says, I mean, there were a lot of very good intentions, but it seems that we have not managed with all these good intentions and all these interventions and activities to really, in all fields and at all levels, to transform societies fundamentally, because it is easier to sort of look at the symptoms and deal with those than look at the systematic sort of fundamental underlying causes, which is true. And you probably have to work in both areas. I mean, it is inevitable that you have to do that. But I very much agree with the person who said in the chat, we have to rethink what we've done with the intention to be transformative, but ultimately seeing it is not changing. What do we learn from that? So it is more about what have we learned from what we did not succeed. I think that is important. And maybe it is not sort of doing it very differently, but maybe it was, I mean, there was something else that did not work sort of in our philosophy. And I think there we come back to things that for me are very important. And that is the sort of colonial gaze that we think we have the solutions, whereas often it is a lot better just to listen, to decentralize, and not to act, and to sort of reverse sort of the top-down way of working, which is still dominant, even though despite all this decentralization, the international development world is still very top-down, north-south, head office, field oriented. And that is something that has unfortunately not fundamentally changed. And I think there's one very big problem.
E eu gostaria de seguir aqui este comentário também dizendo que isto leva a uma das outras questões que é fundamental também no nosso setor, que é muito diferente, que é a dificuldade de aprender com os erros e de assumir que há erros. E essa questão, e a questão da inovação pressupõe erros, não é? Eu trabalhei também no setor das startups durante algum tempo e é uma das coisas que dizem sempre no início que é 90% das startups falham, não é? Portanto, pressupõe-se desde o início do processo de inovação e as empresas sabem isso, as universidades, no setor comercial é já uma questão bastante aceite, que nós vamos perseguir caminhos diferentes, algumas coisas vão resultar, outras não vão resultar e vamos aprender com isso. Mas se já começamos a ter no nosso setor das ONG, da sociedade civil, do desenvolvimento, uma tendência para partilhar boas práticas, se calhar uma tendência para partilhar aquilo que correu menos bem, não existe e isso é fundamental quando falamos de processos de inovação e mudança. E acho que liga também aquilo que a Teresa também estava a dizer sobre esta percepção que a inovação é uma coisa rápida. Quando falamos, se calhar, de um produto que tem uma aplicação no mercado comercial, é verdade, é preciso ser rápido, é preciso chegar primeiro, não é, para ter sucesso. Em termos de mudança social, os parâmetros são um pouco diferentes e a tendência é sempre ainda, infelizmente, olhar para as coisas daquela perspectiva mais tradicional, económica, de lucro, digamos assim, e menos do ponto de vista da inovação social. Eu gostava nós já estamos aqui a passar muito o nosso tempo, o que é bom, porque acho que há aqui muito interesse na discussão, mas eu queria passar a palavra ao Munir para algumas conclusões e depois, se a Rita quisesse dar aqui uma última palavra para encerrar, acho que seria ótimo. Munir?
Great. Yeah, just to thank all of you for this brilliant discussion. Before we leave, I just want to leave you with 3 quick tips on what can we do to become more innovative. And I think these are really important. And in my own journey of learning about innovation, like I feel like I've made a lot of mistakes, and they are linked to these 3 tips that I'm going to give you. The first one is we should become more humble as development practitioners. We tend to think we know it all, but the true reality is that communities are the true experts in their own problems. We are not our beneficiaries. We work for them, we work with them, but we are not them. We need to realize that. The second thing is about skills. Just because we've been working in the development sector for many years, or we went to the university and took a degree, that doesn't mean that we have all the skill sets on how we can best approach innovation in the development sector. So there are a number of methodologies. Today we heard about human-centered design, design thinking, systems thinking. They all have kind of the same principles. But go and study them. They will be, and participatory design, these are very useful tools to have in your hand when you are working directly with communities. And the third is about creative confidence. I've seen in working with thousands of people within my own organization, it's difficult for our leadership to allow for change. People have their offices, they are used to work there in their computer. It's much more painful to leave the computer and go out to the communities and spend time with them, going out of our comfort zone. So try to do that in your own world of how you can leave your comfort zone and try out these other ways to be closer to people and to innovate with them. Because ultimately, if you want to transform the world, it starts with you. Just first start to transform yourself. And ultimately, this innovation is a mindset shift. Thank you very much.
Muito obrigada, Munir. Rita, queres dizer umas últimas palavras e depois encerramos?
Posso dizer, agradecer mais uma vez pela organização deste webinário, pela relevância do tema, pelo que coloca no fundo, confronta as organizações também com o seu trabalho e com as perspectivas futuras e principalmente coloca as organizações perante um cenário de mudança, que na verdade não é novo e que as próprias experienciam todos os dias, portanto não é nada novo, mas que estão também a fazer o seu caminho e a fazer o seu processo. Portanto, nós acreditamos na plataforma que as organizações, principalmente as ONGD, não é? As organizações não governamentais para o desenvolvimento, têm processos internos de inovação constantemente, porque procuram sempre soluções novas, diferentes, mesmo que às vezes a diferença não seja tão significativa, para procurar resolver os problemas com as pessoas com quem trabalham. Portanto, nós na plataforma também estamos nesse percurso de tentar perceber onde é que está a inovação, apoiar as organizações nesse processo que queiram fazer, exatamente para poderem contribuir com aquilo que é a sua missão. Não é nada de novo, é aquilo que elas próprias já querem concretizar, não é? E que está muito baseado na questão da transformação social e num trabalho colaborativo com as pessoas para, no fundo, um futuro melhor, basicamente é isso. Portanto, só agradecer mais uma vez e a presença também de todos e todas nesta importante reflexão, que foi significativa e que nos deu aqui umas pistas também a nós, plataforma, para o nosso trabalho e para os desafios que temos agora em mãos relacionado com este tema também. Portanto, obrigada.
Muito obrigada a todos e entraremos em contacto, porque esta não é uma discussão para deixar aqui, é para continuar, certo? Muito obrigada e uma boa tarde a todos.